Is it possible to have a safe and productive conversation regarding LGBTQ+ community on campus and faith?
What steps is Southern taking, if any, to specifically address the LGBTQ+ community on campus?
Consider this conversation ignited. Hi guys, welcome back to Ignite. My name is Elise Deschamps and I'm a junior out of the SJC.
Hey guys, my name is Aaron Patterson and I am also a junior out of the SJC.
Today's conversation is one that is very personal and honest for a lot of people.
By no means with this episode are we presenting total truths or best practices. We just intend to continue or start in some cases an important conversation under a light outside of the harsh light of debate.
We are excited to have Dr. Alan Parker on set with us today. He's a professor in the religion department and he heads up the LGBTQ+ policy committee on SAU's campus.
But before that, our very incredible Clarissa, the freshman, the new one who's super cool and really good at reporting, she's put together a little package for us with more of your student faces from around the campus.
Clarissa, take it away.
Thank you, Aaron and Elise. Today we're going to ask students about the LGBTQ+ community on campus. Let's go! Do you think the LGBTQ+ community feels accepted on campus?
I don't think they probably feel fully accepted, but because I think there's still probably some anti-LGBT sentiment from some teachers, professors, speakers here. And so I think although some are accepting, some are not. So the LGBT members still feel that.
I'm actually going to say no for the moment. I'm going to say no. I have had encounters with some of them, and I've had some of those conversations, and I feel like some of them don't feel like they're accepted. So
I don't really know any, but I say that the support for the LGBTQ+ community has been pretty well received, and I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I would say probably yes. I obviously can't speak for them because I don't know anyone specifically, but I would say probably accepted. I'm sure there's things we can do to be better about it, but there's nothing I've noticed that's really bad so far. So.
Do you think that they're discriminated against?
I don't really know. There's probably some discrimination, but I don't really know the whole situation right now on campus.
I say some do, but I think most people accept them.
I've definitely heard a lot of students using language that is very discriminatory towards the LGBT community. And even though some people might say, oh, I accept you, their actions show otherwise. And I think that's felt.
In some ways, yeah.
I actually have no idea just because, again, I haven't heard of any conflict that's happened or anything. So I want to say no, but I also there could be something and I just missed it,
Yeah. But have you guys heard of any support system or services around campus for this community in specific?
I haven't.
Yeah, I don't think I have.
Yeah, I haven't.
Well, I don't think the school has officially had anything to support the community, but I know that there's a group of people who are part of the LGBTQ community that are trying to make a group for it on campus. So yeah.
honestly, I know for everybody there's counseling services and things like that, but for them specifically, I don't really know. There's no public, or I shouldn't say public. There's no clubs, directly approved by them for them to have that. So I don't really know. So yeah.
So that was what students had to say on the promenade. Back to you, Aaron and Elise, on the studio.
Clarissa, thank you so much for putting that together.
Dr. Parker, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm just glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
So before anything else, I want to make sure that we have your specific role on the committee correct, because it's kind of important. So what is the committee that you head?
So it's called the Committee for Sexual Integrity, and I am the senior advisor for sexual integrity. So I report to cabinet and kind of give them advice about the way to go forward. But this committee deals with sexual integrity as a whole, and not just LGBT issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our first question is, what do you think is or has been the biggest challenge of approaching a conversation regarding LGBTQ plus within a religious organization?
So I would say the biggest challenge for me has been how to be heard in a very polarized environment. People are trying to put you into a category. Are you side A, side B? Are you liberal? Are you conservative? What do you think about this issue? And when you're put into those little categories, it's very hard to be heard with nuance. And so from the beginning, for instance, on this campus, we've said two things. Number one, we take the Bible seriously. And number two, we want to love people well. And when we say those two things, people are trying to say, well, but do you really take the Bible seriously? Or do you really love people well? And we're trying to hold both of those, and we believe it can be done. But it's really a challenge to be able to say both things without either side saying, but you don't do our side enough. Yeah.
So before we go any farther, I do want to lay down sort of a context for everyone watching and for all of us here in this conversation. Many of our viewers might have been raised and probably still live among a conservative Christian environment. Many times it feels that LGBTQ plus don't belong in those communities and need to choose between their faith and their sexual identity. Some get to a point of even developing an anger against God and even deny his existence. Many, because he didn't help him, whatever help may be in their situation. For those that remain in faith, it looks that the only two options are celibacy or conversion therapy. So that's sort of the context that we are bringing the next few questions from.
Well, I want to speak to that context in a way before we continue. And I want to address our community, because I know some of you out there who are listening right now come from the LGBTQ plus community. And I want to say something to you on behalf of the church. I love the church. I love the environment that I'm in. But on behalf of that church, I want to apologize, because we're done with the Adam and Steve jokes. We are done with speaking to people in an us-them kind of language. And I want to let you know that we care about you, that your experience matters to us, and we want to hear your voice. And this is not something that you can just walk away from this faith community. We care about you, we want to follow you, and we want you to know that love that's coming from our hearts. And there are more of us than what you think.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
That is a powerful thing.
That's super powerful.
So I'm going to start with the next question. Why does it feel as if the church is alienating the very people it is trying to reach?
Well, that might seem like a contradiction to what I just said.
I was like, should I ask this?
But it is true. It is true that we have not done a good job. And I think it's because we want to hold to Bible truths. And our concern is, if we don't hold to those Bible truths, then we're going to be throwing away the very foundation of our faith.
Sure.
But we can't hold to Bible truths in ways that push people away. What's remarkable to me about what Jesus did, Jesus had a holiness that was contagious. People wanted to come to him. You could be a prostitute, a tax collector, it didn't matter who, they were attracted to him. So whatever truths we hold, whatever holiness we hold, needs to be done in such a way that people are attracted to it. And I believe that is possible. So I hope we can turn over a new page when it comes to this matter.
With that being said, here on campus at Southern, what steps is Southern taking, if any, to specifically address the LGBTQ plus community and provide care for them?
Okay, great question. And so what we did about a year ago, we actually had a focus group that sat down with members from the LGB community. We did the T side through an interview, but we listened and we said, what is it you'd like to hear? And then we shared that with the Committee for Sexual Integrity that has a number of administrators on it. This semester, we have a life group that people who are struggling in their faith journey and relating to their sexuality can go to that life group. And it's something that you can request to join through the campus ministries page. And you'll have an opportunity to have a graduate master's in social work leading that discussion, doing some clinical work, as well as at the same time a place to have a discussion. On top of that, we've had a convocation where We dealt with what does the Bible say. Not everyone's going to agree with the perspectives that were shared, but we brought in Bible scholars and we had them share why is it that the Seventh-day Adventist Church sees these Bible passages in this way. And then we've been finding ways to how do we reach out better? How do we connect with people from this community better so that they feel heard, that they feel like we care about them. So I think we're doing a number of different things and trying to hold to, yes, we take the Bible seriously and we want to learn how to love people well.
How can we as a campus create a safe space for conversations regarding LGBTQ+ at Southern? And how can we save those conversations regarding LGBTQ+ without making the either side feel diminished?
Well, there's a fascinating website called A Bridge Across the Divide. And what it does is people from diverse perspectives on sexuality and orientation and identity have a discussion. I certainly believe on this campus we can do that in our classes, that our classes should be a place where we can navigate complex sexual issues in a way that leaves everyone feeling respected. So I think we are doing that. It's not just that we say we will do it, we are doing that. At the same time, this is a Christian institution. We come from that perspective, and I think that that's going to inform our conversations. But there are ways to disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that's what we should aim at. I won't even say it's about not diminishing the other side. It's about really loving and respecting people with diverse opinions. Why don't we model this to our nation? We can certainly do with that right now.
That'd be cool.
Our next question is, what are some of the questions regarding LGBTQ+ or sexual identity and faith have you heard among Southern students?
I think you mentioned some of this in your context earlier. For instance, a question is, why is it when I pray, temptation doesn't go away? And it doesn't have to just do with LGBT, it has to do with sexuality and faith, because there's a lot more heterosexual pornography, for instance, than there is among homosexuals, because just numbers-wise, we know that. So why is it when I pray, temptation doesn't go away? And I think the answer to that really comes from 1 Corinthians 13. People misquote this because it says, that with every temptation, there's a way of escape. And people think it's like a beam me up, Scotty. Do people still use that reference?
I know what you're talking about, but no, I don't think
Star Trek.
I don't know.
It's the idea that the guy gets beamed up to a spaceship before the trouble really arrives. And we think temptation is the same way, that we just pray and we are zapped out of the temptation. But actually, the Bible verse continues, with every temptation, there's a way of escape that you may be able to endure it. And what I've found with temptation, I don't know what it's like for you guys, that it is a matter of endurance sometimes. It can be tough. So I don't think God is in the business of zapping away our sexual desires. And I think that that's a misnomer for how we approach this issue. Instead, every person has to deal with sexual desires. The single person, the married person, the heterosexual, the homosexual. They're going to have to deal with their sexual desires or lack of it. And I think we need to recognize that God's relationship to that is to carry us through it, not out from it. So that's one. I think a second question is, can I really trust the Bible if it seems so negative towards gays? And my answer to that is that the Bible says some pretty strong things, but look at the context. And for instance, Romans 1, which is one of those big texts, it says what appears to be some really negative things. But you look at the context of Romans 1. Romans 1 says, Gentiles are really bad people. Then it says, but Romans 2, you Jews are also bad people. In fact, you who judge, you're guilty of the same things. And then Romans 3, verse 23 says, we are all guilty. And then at the end of Romans 3, it brings in the gospel. So the context of Romans 1, this kind of harsh text, it appears on homosexuality, is also within a context of God's grace and love and how he's saving every person. So the question I would ask is to say, I don't want to minimize what the Bible says, but I do want us to look at the context. And almost always, as you look at the context, there's grace. So yes, the Bible has a pretty high ethical standard. Even look at Jesus. He puts adultery on the level with lust. That's a really high ethical standard because almost everybody I've met has at some stage lusted. But then he meets somebody caught in adultery, and how does he respond? I don't condemn you. Now go and sin no more. He leads with compassion, and then he goes to transformation. And so when you look at the Bible, it leads with compassion, and then it steps to transformation. And I think that helps young people to go, you know what, maybe the Bible is not as negative as what I thought it was.
Interesting.
So those are the kinds of questions we process in class, and I'm sure many teachers are having those kinds of conversations with their students.
All right, so final question. How do we shift the community's commonly shared perspective on LGBTQ+?
LGBTQ people are not a problem. This is about people. And from God's perspective, people are an opportunity, not a problem. He solves the problem of sin, but he doesn't see the people as the problem. He sees sin as the problem. And sin is something that affects all of us. So instead of us versus them language, I think we need to move to we are God's workmanship that he is trying to work through to bring about an incredible thing in the universe. He is working through us. He has given us creativity. In fact, some of the most creative people you know come from the LGBTQ community. Some of the most caring, the most compassionate people you know come from the LGBTQ community. And so my hope is, instead of seeing this as a problem, we can see it through God's eyes, that these are people that he loves and that he loves all of us in the same way, and we are all an opportunity. I'll give you an example. C.S. Lewis said that if we were to meet somebody who was in their transformed state, like, heaven state, we would be tempted to fall down and worship them. Well, do we see that when we look at somebody from the LGBT community? Do we see somebody who is so valuable that if we could see them in their transformed state, we would say, wow, you are just amazing. And he called it the weight of glory that we are each carrying. So that's what I'd like us to see, that each person has the weight of glory bound up within them. And if we could see them through God's eyes, we would have a very different perspective.
Well, we're so grateful that you came on this show with us today.
Thank you so much.
It's a really interesting conversation. I've never thought about a lot of these things these way. Where would someone who is struggling with this, wanting to talk about this, where would they go on campus to be able to do that?
So we have tried to set up some resources. We have the counseling center. We have the chaplain's office. My door is always open. If somebody wanted to come see me, they could just make an appointment through my calendar, send me an email and say, I'd love to come see you. I would love them to take advantage of that opportunity. And we're developing some resources through the library where you can check out books. We're getting more books in this area. I was just dealing with them this week, setting that up, and we've got some websites ready to go. We have quite a few resources in that life group as well. We're just inviting you. This is a conversation we want to be a part of. We want to give you the resources that will help you to figure out how your faith relates to your sexuality.
Do you have anything else? I don't have any more questions.
Me neither. That was pretty intense, though, I will say.
I appreciate you coming on and
so
taking on this episode.
So my pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you guys around campus.
Absolutely.
And I hope the rest of your episodes go great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for watching today's episode, and please make sure to stay tuned for next week where we have an interview with the senior business consultant for the USA Olympic team.
Also, if you've made it this far in the video, if you haven't already, subscribe and then like, because it helps our algorithm, and then hop over to our Instagram, IgniteSAU. Follow us there, and on our IGTV, you will find a video by one of our freshman reporters, Garrett, with 2 social workers talking about a life group that they started last year for LGBTQ+ students. Make sure to check that out. That's all.
Bye, guys.